There is no hood like parenthood. Hi, I'm Kanika Chadda Gupta. I'm a former CNN journalist, mom of 3, including twins, and host of That's Total Mom Sense, the podcast. Now, if I had $1 every time I heard, gee, you have your hands full. On my show, I interview change makers on their life lessons, legacy, and superpower of intuition, which I call our mom sense and dad sense. I've had the privilege of working with Mom 2.0, March of Dimes, and the White House, and have had some pretty amazing parents on my show.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kelly Rowland.
Hi, this is Chelsea Clinton.
It's me, Bobby Brown. Can't wait to share my story.
That's Total Mom Sense is a production of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. To join my tribe, visit that'stotalmomsense.com and follow me on Instagram at Kanika Chadda Gupta. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to Food for Thought, a special podcast series on That's Total Mom Sense, presented by First Water by Akvile, mineral-rich Nordic spring water made for new moms and babies. I'm your host, Kanika Chadda Gupta, journalist and mom of 3, including twins. In this series, we're speaking with doctors, experts, and healers who are helping us reclaim our kitchens as places of nourishment, empowerment, and joy. We'll be answering your questions around what should you buy organic, tonics to help you cleanse your system in the morning, spices you should use on the regular, what to eat when you're traveling and on the go, what to eat in your 20s versus menopause, specialized teas to perk you up and wind you down, and must-haves in your kitchen. This is Food for Thought. Bon appetit! To celebrate Breastfeeding Awareness Month, and with this summer heat, this episode is brought to you by First Water by Akvile, the first naturally mineral-rich, never-filtered bottled water in the U.S. that's certified safe for infants under 6 months when mixed with formula. Founded by a mom of 3, Aiste Milute, First Water follows European postpartum practices where nursing water is essential. As many new moms know, breastfeeding uses up to 25% of the body's energy, and staying hydrated is critical. But most bottled waters are filtered or purified, stripping away the very electrolytes and minerals your body needs to recover and thrive. First Water is different. Sourced from a unique spring, it retains its natural magnesium, calcium, and electrolytes, has a natural pH of 8, and contains absolutely 0 nitrates or nitrites. That means it supports faster hydration, better oxygen absorption, digestion, and overall wellness for moms, babies, and the entire family. Whether you're mixing formula, nursing around the clock, or simply looking for cleaner hydration, First Water is setting a new gold standard in maternal and infant wellness in the U.S. Learn more at getfirstwater.com. That's spelled get, the number 1, ST, water.com. Because your baby's first water should be the best. Welcome back to That's Total Mom Sense. This is our Food for Thought series. It's where we explore how to live well, parent consciously, and heal from the inside out. I wanted to kick off today's episode with some hard truths. Over 40% of U.S. adults are clinically obese, and rates among children and teens have nearly tripled in the past 4 decades. At the same time, eating disorders are on the rise, especially among young girls, fueled by diet culture and social media. But in the midst of this confusion, there is hope. A growing body of science is proving what ancient traditions always knew, that food is medicine, and healing our gut is the gateway to healing our whole selves. Today's guest is here to guide us on that path. Dr. Erika Siegel is a naturopathic doctor, best-selling cookbook author, and founder of a groundbreaking natural medicinary. Her work blends clinical expertise with deep-rooted wisdom and practical, family-friendly tools to support lifelong health. Dr. Siegel, thanks so much for joining me on That's Total Mom Sense.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Awesome. So I wanted to start from the beginning, our roots, pun intended. Tell us about your childhood and how, your life experiences led you to the world of holistic medicine.
Well, I grew up in New Jersey in a fairly traditional family, and we were sort of humming along as you might expect. And my dad actually had a widowmaker heart attack when I was 8 years old. He survived this, and our family became oriented around his health and a heart healthy lifestyle, which in the 80s looked different than it does today, but it started to orient me around food and nutrition, and that there are other ways to take care of ourselves other than pharmaceuticals. And then I was interested in a career in healthcare, and doing integrative functional medicine just seemed like a good fit because it was looking at the whole scope of what we have available to us for healing. And it really looks at prevention as a cornerstone and understanding what someone's risks are and identifying them as an individual and treating them as such.
Yes, yes. And then what drew you to like all things naturopathic? And because I have such a deep respect for that growing up, I'm Indian and we relied so heavily on all things natural and, have just a plethora of home remedies for everything. What was that gravitational pull for you?
Something about my constitution feels aligned with the natural world. Being in nature, seeing her gifts, the plants that grow right outside my house here in Portland, Oregon, recognizing that medicine is everywhere and learning that most pharmaceutical medicines actually are derived from something in nature. So when I learned that, and in college, I just happened to study indigenous cultures as part of a class, and I learned about their medicine making. And traveling around the world, I had a lot of opportunity as a young person to travel in developing nations. And I was always fascinated by how they dealt with medical conditions and health. They would really use what was available to them, what grew outside their doors. And it just opened my eyes that there's so much more than what we've maybe been trained to think is available to us that has been produced over the last 50 to 100 years. What have people been doing for the thousands of years before that? So I think I came across it more as a anthroposophical and anthropological way, where I just was curious, what have humans been using for all these years? And then that combined with my natural tendency to gravitate towards natural things just kind of was a perfect fit to see, what's happening today combined with the advances in biochemistry and science. How can we use the techniques that we have today, the technology that we have today, to understand our history and to understand the natural world?
I know that you've, shown how we should treat our body as an ecosystem. And that's something that, holistic wellness is all about. How do we achieve this like homeostasis or like equilibrium with everything that we ingest? Tell us about, we're 70% water, but like, what is that, more acid, more base? Like, break it down.
All biological systems are trying to achieve homeostasis. Every plant, every animal, humans, that is how we function, is always micro corrections to get back to that place of balance. And a lot of it requires tuning in to what our body needs. That's really a relationship with self, as opposed to outsourcing that wisdom and constantly listening to the next person tell you to eat this or that. It really comes back to asking yourself, does this feel right? Does this feel good? And the answer might change depending on what's going on in your life. If you are pregnant and growing a baby, you may feel more of a desire for protein. If you are more sedentary, you may be able to get away with less calories. If you're out in the desert, you're going to need water and salty food because your body's going to say, I need more electrolytes. So some of it is about a relationship with ourself. And then the other piece is just understanding that we have core requirements as a human. We have a requirement for our macronutrient levels to be met. So that's protein, fat, and carbohydrates. And we have core requirements for our micronutrient levels to be met. And that's going to come That's the little vitamins and minerals, the antioxidants that we're going to find in fruits and veggies and nutrient dense food. So having a variety in your diet and like hitting the mark on the macronutrients and the micronutrients, that's going to give your body what it needs to approximate homeostasis.
Yes, yes. And can you actually explain what the macro and micro are, examples?
Yeah, so the macronutrients are really, that's just three categories: protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So your proteins are going to be your animal-based proteins, eggs, beans, legumes, nuts, seeds, that sort of thing. There's also protein, small amounts of protein in veggies. Your fats are going to be your healthy fats that are going to form your cells and regulate your nervous system and insulate your tissue. And that's going to be avocados, nuts and seeds, and then the oils that can be pressed from fatty foods like olive oil, or even butter is pressed from milk. So it's concentrated versions of fat from various sources. And then we have the carbohydrates, which are the starches, and those supply important calories. They supply B vitamins, fiber. So the whole food forms are going to be like a sweet potato or an apple, a banana, rice, quinoa. Down the line are the processed grains, the carbohydrates, which tend to be adulterated and stripped of a lot of nutrients and therefore not as healthy for us. So that's going to be corn chips and cereal and crackers. But we do have a need for carbohydrates in our diet, and a lot of diet plans will kind of avoid those foods, but that can be detrimental to some people's bodies, especially if they're growing or if they're in a time of stress or healing. They really do need some level of carbohydrates. Those are the macronutrients. Those are the big guys. They build. Macronutrients build our body, give us the building blocks to grow and repair. And the micronutrients are the little things. It's what you're going to find in a carrot, wrapped up in an apple, along with the carbohydrates are going to be phytochemicals, nutrients. It's also where you're going to find a lot of your fiber is going to come along with those foods that have the micronutrients. So it's really mostly your fruits and veggies. They're going to give you the tiny vitamins, vitamins A and D and E and K and C, all the letters. And the reason we need those is every pathway in our body requires those nutrients to make ATP, which is fuel, for our detox pathways to work appropriately, and for our cells to heal when they've been damaged. And reality is our cells are always being damaged and always healing. So we need a lot of nutrient density for that.
I want to double click on produce, all things fruits and veggies, and have you break down the clean 15 and the dirty dozen. When we are in the grocery store, what should we turn to that we're like, without fail, organic? And what are the things that are like, okay, it doesn't really matter on this particular thing?
Well, the clean 15 and dirty dozen, those are just kind of succinct ways to say which foods are most susceptible to harmful growing practices and which are going to be less susceptible and less dangerous. So the dirty dozen, these are foods that are going to pull up a lot of pesticides, herbicides, maybe even heavy metals into the food while they're growing if they're being treated in that way. And so that's going to be all your berries, very, very vulnerable to pesticides and what's sprayed on them. So strawberries, blueberries. It's going to be the greens like spinach, kale, collards, and mustard greens. It's also the stone fruit. So the summer fruit that grows on trees like peaches, nectarines, as well as the fall fruits, pears and apples, grapes, a lot of the peppers. So bell peppers, hot peppers, cherries, celery, tomatoes. These are all on the Dirty Dozen list. And you can actually look up, if you just Google Dirty Dozen, you'll see the list. I also have a shopping guide that I have on my website that has this as a little cheat sheet as part of the shopper's guide. It also has protein sources and what have you. What I always add onto the Dirty Dozen is dairy and meat and eggs. So thinking about what animals you eat or animal products you eat, and recognizing that anything that they eat or they're exposed to gets concentrated in their flesh and their fat. I believe it's really important to get cleanly sourced cow milk products, because if they're exposed to pesticides, GMO, corn feed, antibiotics, growth hormone, that is going to be extremely concentrated in their milk. And then you're getting a large dose of that.
Right.
Same for meat, their muscle is going to have a concentration of those problematic things. And that translates right into your toxic load, which we're already managing a lot because we can't choose everything that we're exposed to. Our air, our soil, our water all has contamination in it. And so when we can choose, I recommend that people get pretty stringent about that and choose organic as much as they can from small farms, local farms. You're going to get your best products. I'll also remark that coffee is one that's not technically on the Dirty Dozen list and often gets overlooked. I think because we consume so much coffee in this country and around the world, people aren't really thinking about the sourcing of it. And that is something we really want to pay attention to. Coffee can be grown in very poor conditions. It is very susceptible to mold. And it is also susceptible to being oversprayed because it's grown in countries that have less regulations around what they're spraying and what they're using on the plants. So I would recommend an organic, fair trade, mold-free coffee. And you can look that up and find companies that can guarantee that.
And so would you say that, like, as a rule of thumb for those who might have a tighter budget, the organic should be the produce that you're eating, the peel, and something that has a peel, like a banana, is like okay to not go organic?
The ones that are what would be considered the clean 15 that you can save money on by not choosing organic. Avocados are a good one. Bananas are kind of somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Papaya, the melons, kiwi, those foods you can get conventional. Also, cabbage tends to be a very hardy vegetable that doesn't pull a lot from the ground. And so cabbage is a safe one. Watermelon is a safe one. Sweet potatoes, mango. So a lot of the tropical fruits are hard to get organic and actually are fine to get conventional.
That's excellent. And can we talk about grains too? Because with kids, they love their cereal. And I know with my kids, there was actually this time that I had all three. I have twins and a younger one. They're all 18 months apart. So at the time, there were 5 and 4. And I took them to Target with me, and they knew about how we only get the organic cereal. So it's the Cascadian Farms and the Kashi, and they love it. Surprisingly, there are, you can get your honey O's, like a honey nut Cheerios. That's organic,
Right.
and that's because of the Roundup. So, tell us about Roundup and why we should care about that.
Yeah, Roundup is a very, very potent chemical that is being sprayed on all of our wheat, unless it's organic, and a lot of our other produce. And it makes the grain more drought resistant. It allows them to basically get more out of the land. And it is an extremely dangerous chemical. In fact, there's many class action suits going on right now against Roundup from farm workers that are exposed to it regularly because they have really high incidences of leukemia,
Oh,
lymphoma, multiple myeloma. I believe that in some amount of time it will be completely banned and we will say, can you believe we used to put this on our food? Roundup contains glyphosate, which we know is a neurotoxin and an endocrine disruptor. So it affects our body's hormones. It competes with our receptors and basically kind of hijacks our endocrine system. The list goes on and on. This is a very, very dangerous food product.
mm,
And unfortunately, so many of our wheat products are high in glyphosate, and people are having a lot of reactions to wheat products. And they may think that it's due to gluten, and it may be, but it also could be due to glyphosate. So
wow.
I recommend that all wheat products are organic and, if possible, to get ancient wheat products. So ones that are made with a grain that is actually an older version of the wheat that we currently grow here. Because somewhere along the 1950s, the grain that was introduced into the US started to get adulterated and modified to increase its gluten content because it was easier to work with in the machines and would create a chewy texture that people enjoyed. Fast forward 70 years, and we have learned that that grain, organic or not, is really problematic when it's that high in gluten. So I would go with the ancient grains. It'll actually say like ancient wheat or spelt, and then you're getting a better wheat product. And this is evidenced by people will tell me, I can't eat anything in the US that's made with wheat, but when I travel to Europe, I can eat everything and I'm fine. And that's
Yeah.
because they're actually dealing with a different type of wheat there.
Absolutely. I actually want to plug a neighborhood favorite pizza place. It's called SQ Pizza. And we love it because it's artisanal pizza made with Italian dough. And so the owners, they have one location in Montvale, New Jersey, where we are, and in Mawa. It's very easy for them to ship the dough here, but they make it with that. And it's like your classic nonas, the square, round, whatever you like. And it definitely digests better. My kids love it too. I think it's like important that we find out about this stuff, because if you just go with whatever's out there, you're not getting the best. And European tends to be much more regulated.
Yes, it's so true. There's a company, Sunrise Flour Mill, that sells online grain, and they have like pancake mix and pastas, and that's where I get a lot of my grain items, because they have basically a heritage wheat flour. It's organic heritage wheat, so it's an ancient grain and it's produced in a healthy way.
Back to school season is here, which means it's time to label everything. From water bottles to jackets, Name Bubbles makes it easy to keep track of your child's belongings with durable, dishwasher-safe, and laundry-safe labels. My 3 kiddos love choosing their own designs. Think unicorns and dinosaurs and more. And there are packs for daycare, school, sports, and even college. New this season, the custom clothing stamp. It's a quick, no-sew, no-iron solution that works on everything from onesies to swimsuits and lasts for over 40 washes. It's kid-safe, customizable, and even comes with refill kits for long-term use. Name Bubbles is mom-owned and proudly made in the USA, helping families stay organized for over 15 years. Check out my podcast interview with the founder, Michelle Brandress, from the archives. Visit namebubbles.com and use code MOMSENSE15 to receive 15% off your order. Happy labeling! Now I want to get into just kind of practical takeaways you could give us, starting with adults. So, as I mentioned in the beginning, obesity has been on the rise for decades now. What are things we should kind of be mindful of if weight loss is that one thing that's like top of mind at pretty much every phase of our life?
Well, if we're looking to reduce our weight, I would first do an inventory of the macronutrients. Are you getting, like if you look at your plate of food, do you have a third of it protein, a third of it carbohydrates, a third of it fat, and represented there, like ideally there'd be like, it's about 50% vegetables. If you look at a plate of food and it's out of balance, like if you're having pancakes for breakfast, all you've had are carbohydrates. You haven't had protein.
Right.
If you're having a bagel with cream cheese, really that's kind of wasted calories. I'd rather that you put a bunch of turkey meat on that bagel if you must have a bagel. So having a, honest conversation with yourself about your meals, ideally not skipping meals, because your body really wants that rhythm and it doesn't want to be starved. That will create a stress response and the adrenals will start pumping out more cortisol. So I recommend that people have breakfast and that it have protein in it. And maybe thinking beyond the typical breakfast of cereal or a piece of toast, and even having dinner foods for breakfast. I will have zucchini with chicken and rice.
Yum.
Yeah.
Yes.
When I traveled in India, I realized, we're eating khichdi every meal. That model of eating toast or eating cereal is, that's sort of our model for breakfast, but that's not what they're doing around the world. So I've learned a lot from traveling and recognizing that people eat the same food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's what I personally do. I recommend that we use vegetables as a carrier. So maybe instead of a piece of bread, using romaine lettuce and filling it up like little boats, or cabbage. You can use cauliflower as instead of rice, or doing half rice and half cauliflower. Like really go big with the veggies. Let it be what you dip into your hummus instead of a chip. I also recommend that people don't eat after dinner. So once dinner is done, and if you want something sweet, have it right after dinner, and then you're done. Your body doesn't need any more calories at that point. And if you eat up until bedtime, you will shut down a lot of your metabolic processes at night that would be burning off the fuel. Cut it off 2 to 3 hours before bed, and that seems to have a pretty big impact on our weight.
What's your take on intermittent fasting and how, maybe men and women should be doing it differently? I know it's definitely worked for me. I'm not so hard and fast about it, but I only really eat one bigger meal, and it's definitely in the day. So it could be my breakfast or my lunch, depending on how I'm feeling. And my dinner, I eat like a bird. you know?
Mhm.
So, yeah. And even that's around like 5 p.m. latest, and I sleep by
Mhm.
10. So,
Yeah.
I've noticed that has really just transformed my wellness level and body
Mhm.
too. But yeah, tell us about intermittent fasting.
Yeah, intermittent fasting, also known as time-based eating, is having a feeding window and a fasting window. And during your fasting window, our hormones will come back down, our insulin and our glucagon will go down. And during our feeding window, those hormones will go up and be active. And the concept of intermittent fasting is that when you give your body a chance to rest and not do the hard work of digestion, that it can get to its cue of a lot of things. It can turn up the metabolism, it can do a lot of healing, it can increase immune function, it can starve off cancer. There's a lot of application for fasting or intermittent fasting. Now, on a day-to-day basis, people will respond differently to intermittent fasting. Like kids and teenagers really shouldn't have prolonged fasting windows because they're in such a rapid time of growth that it tends to stress their body out. So the rule about not eating after dinner, I do not apply to anyone who's growing, and that's including a pregnant woman. If you're growing a
Mhm.
baby or growing yourself, you should eat when you're hungry, and that may be all the way up until bedtime, and that's fine. But
Yep.
for everyone else, I think that there should be a 12-hour window minimum of no eating. So that could be 7 to 7. Now, for some people, they're going to go to 14 hours, 16, 18, or 20. The effect of that will vary based on who they are. A woman who is 1 week away from her menstrual cycle may not feel great if she puts off breakfast for 4 hours and doesn't eat until noon. She might start to have a blood sugar crash and not feel great. Or if you're going to work out in the morning, it's not a great idea to work out fasted because, especially if you're doing strength training, you're now going to eat your muscles for fuel. If you don't have protein on board, you are going to eat your own muscles to build your muscle back. And you'll just be taking, one step forward, one step back. You will not
Right.
actually build muscle. So regarding, intermittent fast, there's always going to be a little asterisk there. Like it works in this situation, doesn't work great in that situation. If someone's going to wants to do like a 16-hour, I would rather that they skip dinner than skip breakfast, especially if they require a lot of fuel in the morning to get going or if they're going to exercise. That being said, people do different styles of intermittent fasting, maybe not eat till noon. And a lot of people will report they feel more energy, more focused. They feel really good not eating and like delaying their breakfast. And so you have to use your intuition and see how it feels in your body. If you're under a time of stress, your body may find it to be stressful to not eat. So that's
Mhm.
when I would say wake up and have a smoothie or have something protein rich, have another meal, and then maybe see if you need anything after 3 p.m. Maybe your body's fine and doesn't need anything else. So you can kind of feel into it. But I would say for most people, we don't need to eat for 12 hours at least. If we want to push it to 14 or 16, feel into your body and see what it thinks.
And now I want you to help just bust some myths for us. Two things that are just sticking out in my mind in particular, especially that adults consume way too much of, is coffee and alcohol. Tell us why we need to just curb that big time, especially as we're aging.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's interesting that you said them together because we tend to use the coffee as a stimulant and then the alcohol as a depressant, right? We
Right.
we fuel ourselves through the day with coffee and then we look to alcohol as our wind down. And what both of those things are doing are overriding our nervous system and our adrenals response to stressors and to our daily rhythm. So coffee is going to override your fatigue signals and tell you, oh, you're fine, keep going. And then alcohol is a depressant that will initially produce more GABA and make us feel relaxed. But then a few hours in, about 3 to 5 hours, our GABA level will go down and we will be more alert. And this is why people will report that they will fall asleep easily if they've been drinking, but they will wake in the middle of the night and have erratic sleep.
Yeah.
Alcohol really is problematic for achieving our REM sleep, like that deep restorative sleep. Now, coffee is a stimulant, and used in the right ways, it is a medicine. It is just like any other medicine that can be positive for an individual. It increases blood flow to the brain, it increases blood flow to the muscles, it makes us have better focus, better exercise endurance, assuming it's a good match for that person. If someone has a cup of coffee, feels anxious, gets heartburn, then has an energy drop off in the afternoon, then it probably is not a good match for their body. And they could maybe try a different, more gentle stimulant like green tea, black tea, yerba mate. Some people don't recognize that they have alternatives and that it would feel better in their body. So I usually recommend that you give it a try to go off and have a replacement and see if there's something that feels better. Alcohol is interesting because it obviously serves a purpose socially. It helps us relax. It helps people maybe become more socially comfortable, and people associate it with good times. And using alcohol as that tool, I don't know that it's the best one we have. Having a very respectful relationship with it is important because only a little bit of alcohol is safe in our body. Anything more than that, it's an intoxicant that our body has to negotiate with. And the liver is going to take the burden of that. It's inflammatory to our brain cells. There's more and more science saying that, very small amounts of alcohol are problematic in the short term and compounds over time. So I usually recommend that people are really reserved with their alcohol intake, maybe saving it for the weekends and trying to, just have one or two servings and see if that feels like enough. Unfortunately, once we have alcohol, then we lose our ability to make the good choices. So maybe deciding in advance how much you're going to drink. Okay, I'm going to stop myself at 2, and then just enjoying the feeling that you have and not feeling like it needs to be more than that, because it really takes a toll on the entire nervous system. And it does contribute to more anxiety and depression, which is ironic because that's what a lot of people are using it to treat.
Yes, yes. And I mean, I can proudly say that I don't own a coffee machine and I don't drink. And
Yeah.
that's how it's been for like a decade or more. I haven't felt healthier, I'm back to like a weight that I was in my 20s. And I think that has a big, big factor to do with it. So I tell my 40 something friends, like, I know it's going to be hard to rip the Band-Aid, but like, cut that out.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
One thing that I love from your cookbook, which I want to share with everyone, thank you so much for sending me these.
Mhm.
You have the recipes, and before that, the first volume is actually the wisdom.
Mhm.
And this just spoke to me because it's so important to understand the why before we get
Yes.
into the how. And so you explain why we should care about our gut health and how it affects our entire body as a system
Yes.
and our brain health. And I wanted to share a recipe. Speaking of the alcohol
Great.
and the and the coffee fix, one way that I like to start my mornings, thanks to you, is the ACV digestive tonic.
Oh,
So
yeah.
your apple cider vinegar digestive tonic, it's on page 615. And of course, you have to dilute it, but it's a great way to wake up and cleanse the system. And you don't need the caffeine. You shouldn't have the caffeine right away anyway, but this is
Yes.
like the perfect way to start the day.
I really like that too. The apple cider vinegar has a really nice sour quality to it, which stimulates your whole digestive system. So it really will allow for more bile to be released and the liver to do some detoxification. And do you add the chia seeds to it?
Yes, yes,
Hmm.
yeah, love it.
Yeah. So you're getting all that nice fiber, which is going to increase peristalsis. It's wonderful little tonic for digestive health. I really like that recipe too.
Are there any recipes that you love, especially those that like are family friendly, kid friendly?
Yeah, I mean, there's 300 recipes in the book,
Yeah.
and they were developed over 15 years with my family, like with my kids. I have a 17 and 18-year-old son. We developed these in our kitchen with them as the testers and tasters. And so I would say every recipe is family friendly. Some of my favorite chapters are the dips and the dressings chapters, because if you have a good dressing or dip or sauce, it can make anything delicious. So you could have steamed broccoli and rice, which is kind of boring, and then put an amazing gingery coconut sauce on top, and it's the best thing you've ever had. So
Yes.
really finding out what are those dressings, sauces. I mean, for some kids, they'll eat anything if they could dip it in ketchup. It's
Right.
the same concept. Find what is that delicious dip or sauce and always have it available. And then, your family will eat anything with that on it. One of the things we do all the time is we'll just make bowls where we have a grain, we have some protein, a bunch of veggies, and everyone makes their own bowl. And then we have a couple different sauces, and you just go crazy with the sauces, and it's a wonderful meal.
And, taking from your Nourish Me Kitchen is the brand, how easy is it to just grow some herbs at home and feel like, okay, I can have that green thumb. I can make my farm to table, happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you live and what your climate is. I feel like growing herbs, first of all, you have your pots and you can easily grow mint, basil, parsley, rosemary. You can grow all your herbs and spices pretty easily. And then if you have a little bit of a garden spot, you can grow salad greens, tomatoes. It is pretty easy. And the thing I like most about it is it has an effect of having my kids be connected with something growing, something they can tend to and watch and appreciate the flavor of and walk by and take a piece and put it in their mouth. I mean, our kids grew up just eating parsley and sorrel right out of the garden. And
Wow.
it started to train their palate for natural flavors and natural food. And even if it didn't supply all of our salads, like even if we didn't grow enough to make salads all summer long, it created a relationship that, now they're late into their teens and they eat edible things everywhere they go because they can recognize them. They know it as something that is exciting for them. Their body sort of lights up that they can pick something from a garden and pop it in their mouth. So I think of gardening for us as more about relationship than supplying our family with enough farm to table food. And when we can supply our family with a big salad and a bunch of herbs, I feel so satisfied, but really it's about a lifelong relationship with the earth and growing food.
Yes, yes. And I think this is something that can start early on. Like we,
Yes.
spoke about the childhood obesity rates and diabetes
Mhm.
rates that are just kind of soaring. And we have to address this. But there's a way to, introduce it into the home that's easy for everyone. And one thing that I came to realize with my kids is it's a sensorial experience. They need
Yeah.
to touch the food. They need to get their hands in there, need to smell it. They need it all over them. you know?
Yes.
They want to hear the crunch. It's like all
Mhm.
of that needs to happen, and that can make it fun. And also eating in season. I learned this when I actually enrolled my kids in a camp in Ridgewood called Health Barn, and Stacy runs it. And she brought about like 60 kids one week, all different age groups, and they learned so much about gardening and composting and creating a communal table and cooking together. And I was so happy that they had that because I was like, I want to be able to like have them take a piece of kale and not flinch.
Right.
And they will do it when there's peers and a garden and like an experience around it. So if you can create that at your home, then they, don't have these aversions. Okay, let's transition to your mom sense moment. I always feel like this allows us to get to know you on a deeper level. Was there a time that you just really were so glad you trusted that inner knowing, that intuition that we all have as parents, that set you on the right path?
Yes, so many times
Yeah,
actually. As moms, we're so intuitive. And when something just doesn't feel right to us, even if other caretakers or teachers or doctors are telling us it's one way, but if we know something isn't right and we know our child, then I think that should speak louder than everything else. I have experienced that time and time again. You might read in a book that you're supposed to handle something in a certain way, but you're dealing with an individual who hasn't read the textbook.
right.
And your child is a unique person, and we have a sense of who they are that is different than the quote experts. And especially as a physician, and I work with a lot of parents, that are scared because maybe they went to their regular pediatrician and they were told you just have to do X, Y, and Z, or your kid's fine, and they say something's not right here. I trust that parent, and I want to understand what they're seeing through their eyes and give them more options and help them, get to the bottom of something. And so I see this reinforced a lot with my patient base that moms know. So I trust the moms. And, a cute story from raising my kids, our 2.5-year-old ran into a rock and had a big gash on his forehead and he needed stitches. And he needed like 6 stitches in his forehead. And so we're in the ER and they wanted to give him anesthesia to be able to have him stay still for the stitches. Now, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. They would have done like a twilight for 20 minutes and he would have been fine. But I'm a new mom. I'm fiercely protective of my child, and I don't want him having general anesthesia or even twilight if he doesn't need it. And I know my kid, he is so bright. He will listen to me. He trusts me. And I knew that if I told him, listen, I need you to stay perfectly still for the next 10 minutes with a little local anesthetic, that he's going to do it. And the ER doc saw this exchange with me and the nurse, and he said, I have 4 kids. And if mom says he doesn't need it, then he doesn't need it.
Oh,
I remember that. He trusted me because I was like, I know my kid. He's not going to move. Give him a local anesthetic. He's going to be fine. And she's like,
that's beautiful.
I've seen my own wife, handle things like this, and moms know.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm tearing up. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so let's end with a quick rapid fire. I know you share this on other interviews. What are 5 things that you would take with you if you were to be deserted on an island somewhere?
Okay, I'm going to take a supply of avocados. We're going to take a supply of coconuts so we can get the water for hydration and the meat for fat. I'm going to take salt, because anything that we find to eat out there, we're going to need salt on it, and it'll keep our hydration up by restoring electrolytes. I'm going to take ginger root because it's an anti-inflammatory and helps with like every gut thing. It's an antimicrobial. It has a lot of functions in the world. And I'm going to take spirulina caps because they are probably the most nutrient dense food on the planet. It's an algae, and it will supply basically most of the nutrition that we need, even some protein, and give us all the chlorophyll and fuel our mitochondria to make ATP. So that's what I'm bringing.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I hope everybody was taking notes, because there's definitely mentions on there that we wouldn't have thought of. That's great.
Yeah.
And just a food for thought lesson to leave us with today.
Okay. My food for thought lesson is that, especially when we're dealing with our kids, that we are not trying to raise perfect eaters, but we're raising kids that trust their bodies. We're trying to instill intuition, wisdom, and trust. And that is not going to just come from being told what to do and what you should do, but asking yourself what feels right.
Yes, that's exactly what Mom Sense is predicated upon. And we want our kids to be able to use that superpower too. That's excellent. And where can my audience find you and follow you and support you?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm online at nourishme.com. On Instagram, it's at Dr. Erika Siegel with a K, Siegel. And then on Amazon, the Nourish Me Kitchen is available for sale. That's the 2-volume book set that we spoke about today, which has a plethora of information. It's more of an encyclopedia. Book 1 is a functional medicine encyclopedia, and book 2 is the robust cookbook. So that can be found on Amazon or on the website, nourishme.com.
Thanks for listening to this episode of That's Total Mom Sense. You can listen to the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for That's Total Mom Sense. You can learn more about my guests by logging on to www.thatstotalmomsense.com. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, where I'm most active on social media. My handle is @KanikaChadda-Gupta. And if you have ideas for show topics or guests you can't wait to have on the show, write to me at thatstotalmomsense@gmail.com. And lastly, please rate, review, and subscribe to That's Total Mom Sense if you haven't already. Thanks for being in my tribe.